I remember laying in bed in ICU and looking up at the ceiling, and just like that, I wasn't there anymore. I was in a field, and the field was beautiful. It was beyond beautiful. I remember walking down a path, and when I walked down the path, there were flowers on each side. There were just massive amounts of flowers everywhere. I'm a registered nurse. I have been since 1988. I was living in the nurse's apartment across the street from the hospital. I had stayed in the dorm when I was in nursing school, and then I moved in the apartments with all the other graduate nurses and RNs. Me and two of the nurses took care of a patient who had a type of pneumonia called staphylococcus pneumonia. It's a bacterial pneumonia, and it's very contagious. Well, we took all the precautions that we take, what we call PPE, or protective precautions. And so you just think, like in COVID, we had the gown, mask, gloves, everything. And two other nurses that were taking care of this particular patient got sick with it, and I got sick, but I got the worst of it. And I was so sick for so long. I got sick in August of 1988. I had it till April of 1989. So I was sick for 8 solid months. I went to numerous doctors. Finally, I saw an infection control specialist, and he's considered one of the best in the country. As a matter of fact, he was on TV when COVID hit. Well, anyway, one night, one of the nurses that lived in the one of the apartments next to me, she came to check on me because she knew I'd been really sick. And she checked my temperature, and she said, "You've got a fever of over 104.2. She said, "We're going to go to the ER." So she walked me across the street. They admitted me immediately. They put me in ICU. And I was sick. You have no idea. It was misery. It was absolutely 8 months of misery. I couldn't breathe laying down. I couldn't breathe sitting up because the pneumonia was in both my lungs. When they did the chest x-ray, it was completely whited out. That's how much fluid I had in me. I had fluid around my heart. It was really bad. Finally, my fever spiked to 105.6, which is extremely dangerous. I was on massive doses of antibiotics, and I had been so sick for so long, I told the doctors I wanted to be a DNR, which is do not resuscitate. I just couldn't go on anymore. I didn't think I'd get well. They didn't think I'd get well. They told my mother at the time that they said that she's probably going to die. Well, they took me off all antibiotics because I wasn't responding to them anyway. And I remember laying in bed in ICU and looking up at the ceiling, and just like that, I wasn't there anymore. I was in a field, and the field was beautiful. It was beyond beautiful. I remember walking down a path, and when I walked down the path, there were flowers on each side. There were just massive amounts of flowers everywhere, colors I hadn't seen. You can't describe it. You just cannot describe. I'm sure you've heard this over and over again with people who've had near-death experiences, but it's so true. And I remember leaning over, and I smelled this bearded iris, and it smelled just like lemonade. I remember it was like a light purple color. But anyway, there was a low stone wall off in the distance, and I was walking towards it. I know the light that I saw was very, very bright. It wasn't like the sun. It was just a glorious light. Well, I started walking towards all that, and there was like an opening in the stone wall. And about that time, this golden carriage comes around the corner. And the door opened and I just got in. I mean, I was a little confused at first because I was like, where am I? And then I realized, I think I died. I really did. I thought that. And there was no one driving the coach either. There were other people in there. And we were all just kind of looking at each other confused, and the next thing we know, they took us to this huge, huge mansion. And we went into a room. It was completely round. The walls on it were painted a robin's egg blue with gold candles and gold candlesticks on the walls. There were 2 arched doors, and they looked like wooden doors, but they were really, really tall. There was lots of people in this room, young, old, different races, etc. Well, I felt someone that was behind me, and I turned around, and there was my grandmother and great-grandmother. They looked to be about 17 to 20 years old. Now, how did I know it was them? I just did. For one thing, I grew up in the same house with them, so I knew them very well. But how could I possibly have known what my great-grandmother had looked like at that age, because she was born in 1878? But I still knew it was her. They wouldn't let me touch them. And they spoke with me, but everything was like telepathy. And they said, no, you can't touch us, you can't hug us. And they said, you're not ready yet. You're not ready. And about that time, the doors opened up. And these beings came through there, and I knew they were angels. They didn't look male or female, but they kind of gave off a male presence. They were dressed in white robes. They didn't have halos or wings or anything like that. And I know I'm backtracking a little bit, but I didn't go through a tunnel of light. I didn't see rainbow bridges. I didn't see God, anything like that. But I knew that I was going to enter heaven, even though my grandmother, great-grandmother said, no, it's not your time. Well, these beings started taking people in groups through these doors. Now, I could see through the doors, and it was absolutely magnificent. It was gold everywhere. Everything was gold. And except for the sidewalks, they looked like they were almost made of diamonds. And there was a creek, a crystal clear creek running in the middle. And it was just, you just cannot put it into words how magnificent, how beautiful, how wonderful all of it was. Well, I went up to the doors, and they said, no, it's not your time. You have to go back. I said, I don't want to go back. I want to go through. And I tried to bolt through the doors, and they wouldn't let me. They stopped me. Somehow, I don't know how. They didn't grab me or anything, but they just stopped me. And then the next thing I knew, once again, I just like that, I wasn't there. I was staring back up the ceiling in ICU. And when I looked over, there was a nurse that was preparing to take me to the morgue. I didn't know at the time what she was doing, but she said, oh my gosh, she said, you're alive. And I was like, am I? I was still a little confused. And so she called everybody in there because I had no blood pressure, no respirations, and no brainwave activity. They checked it. They checked that because I had asked them to do an EEG to check that, because if you don't have any brainwave activity, you are truly dead. They had already called the funeral home. The doctors had already signed me off as deceased. I've been proven through medical records by the International Study of Near-Death Experiences. My story's been verified. So everything I said happened. Well, my blood pressure was still real low, and they gave me warming IV fluids because my body temperature had already dropped to 90, and because I was just shivering. And then they gave me warming blankets too to get my body temperature back up. And they called my mother and they said she had been screaming. She's only 23. She's only 23. So, yeah, it was a magnificent experience. And how do I know what happened? I always tell people this. Did you get up this morning? Did you eat breakfast, take a shower, maybe go to work? Did you dream those things? Did you hallucinate those things? No, you really did them, right? Same with me. I could see, hear, feel everything around me. I was really there. It was solid. Everything was solid. It was real. It was no dream. It was no hallucination. So that's pretty much my story. And I have just started going public with it after 38 years. I kept it to myself. I didn't tell my husband till around our 20th wedding anniversary because I thought no one would ever believe me. And I thought that when I was in ICU, I thought, I know what happened, but I can't tell anybody. They'll think I'm crazy. So I just kept my mouth shut for a long, long time. And it wasn't until about a year before my mother passed. She passed in 2019. But I told her about it. And now I grew up in a Christian home, and because people have asked me, were you a Christian when it happened? I was kind of on the fence at that time. When you're in your early 20s, you question everything. So, yeah, I was on the fence about, did God really exist and that kind of thing. Yes, he does exist. Yes, he does. I did see animals in heaven. I had 2 dogs run up to me, one a golden retriever, one a German shepherd. Why I didn't see my own dog when I had it when I was growing up, I don't know. But I had a little miniature schnauzer. But I saw other pets and I saw other animals there. They seemed like everybody was getting along, So, yes, I did see pets, and a lot of people want to know about that. And like I said, I saw loved ones. It devastated me when my grandmother died. She was my world. I grew up in the same house with my great grandmother, my grandmother, and my parents. And my dad was a naval officer, so he was gone all the time. And my mother worked all the time. So I was here with my great grandmother and grandmother all the time. And so I knew them very well, and I knew it was them. But they were young, healthy, and I think that's the age that everybody's going to become, between that age range when you actually die. I did learn that I came back with the feeling that everything is one. I really, really don't know how to explain it other than that. There's no religion in heaven either. There is no religion. So that's another thing that people have asked me. I said, no, there's no religion in heaven. So
That sounds so incredible. Just smelling the flower. I mean, I've heard stories about how the flowers are alive. Like you can feel the blade of grass under your feet.
right.
You can count them, and they're sentient and they move with you. And there might be no wind, but they do move. But for them to smell like lemonade, that is really cool.
Well, the thing about it is, to this day, when I lean over and smell an iris, I smell lemonade.
Wow.
And I tried to get my mother had some growing in her flower bed. I tried to get her to smell it. I tried to get my husband to smell. They said, we don't smell anything. I said, but you can't smell it. They said, no. I said, but I do. And I couldn't tell them why at the time.
No, you know what? I actually I read a book by Yogananda, and he said he was sold a certain perfume by a perfume salesman that made you smell amazing. And he smelt it, but nobody else could. And that's what it sounds like. It's like it's kind of stayed with you. Yeah, that's
Yes,
amazing.
it has.
Okay, so the coach had no one driving it. So, like,
Yeah.
what kind of coach was it?
It just like a golden coach. It was kind of round
Like
shaped.
Cinderella's?
Kind of. I mean, but I was never into all that kind of thing growing up. So
I think it's
Yeah, I
awesome.
don't.
I
Yeah, I've
think
never
it's
heard
wonderful.
anybody else mention something like that in a near-death experience. So,
No, but I find that everybody's got their own unique experience. So it must
right.
have meant something to you in some way, even if it's not from this lifetime, because you're describing the gold and the blue and the smells. So all of those are very sensory. That's really amazing. Did you know any of the people in the coach, or were they just people that you feel like
No,
they'd passed on at the same time and you were all being
I,
taken?
right. I did not know them. I thought that they were like me and they died and we were on our way to heaven. That's the only thing I could think of at the time. But everything was solid. Like I said, everything was solid. It was nothing that felt, I mean, it was spiritual, but it wasn't like um, the people I saw were solid as you and I. I mean, how else to describe it? I leaned over to feel things and I heard music coming from somewhere. I didn't know where. It was like soft music coming from somewhere, almost like it came from the flowers too. Everything. It was like harmonized. So
Wow. Yeah, that is incredible. Did the angels see you? Or, I mean, did you feel like they knew who you were exactly, even though they kind of
yes,
were busy? Yeah.
yes,
How tall were they?
they were between 10 and 12 feet tall. They were frightening in a way because they had like an aura around them. I call it the glory of God because I don't know how else to describe it. And that, yeah, you should be a little frightened of. So,
Yeah, I've heard that before. That it's not that they're intimidating. It's almost like they bring you
no.
to your knees because they,
Hmm.
yeah. Your grandmother and your great grandmother. I know, I've heard before that people say you go back to where you looked at your best. So you don't look aged and whatever on the other side. That's just the
Yeah.
physical body that ages. Your spirit doesn't age. So it's interesting that they looked so young because that must have been obviously their time that they looked at their best, which is exciting, you know. We don't have to go with these bodies back through all that nonsense. How did they know it's not your time? And did you feel like it's not your time? Because I know people don't want to leave. When they go the other side, they're like, that's it. I don't want to come back.
Oh no,
Did,
I felt that it was not my time. I didn't want to believe it at the time, but when I came back and was back in ICU, I closed my eyes. And I'm like, let me go back. Let me go back. I mean, I tried to go back, and I knew I couldn't. I knew I couldn't. And then that's when it really dawned on me what happened. And I thought, oh wow. And I thought, like I said, I just couldn't tell anyone. I couldn't tell anyone because I knew I wouldn't be believed. I knew, and at that time it wasn't, I guess, out there like it is now. You know, we didn't have all the ways of communication that we do now. So
yeah.
that's one thing. And I think even if we did, I still wouldn't have told anyone because being a nurse too, you know, you have a license to protect, and you don't want anybody to think you're crazy. So,
And I get it. I actually had a lady who she had a near death experience and she didn't know who to speak to. So she went to her pastor. She told him the whole story and he listened to it. And then he told her when she finished, you're never allowed back in my church.
wow.
And that, I mean, you think he's a man of God.
All
And she
right.
thought, well, I'm going anyway. I'm not going to not go. I've been going to that church for 40 years. And she went the next Sunday. And the next morning, the police showed up at her door with a restraining order.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, I can really understand why you wouldn't want to tell people. I think because they haven't been there. I mean, we don't remember.
Right.
We've been there,
They don't
but we don't
understand.
remember. And it sounds so too good to be true. But like you say, you were brain dead. So they
Yeah.
can't say you were dreaming. They can't say it's just the mind making up stuff because you were brain dead. And there's clinical evidence, which is absolutely great that you've actually got that. What happened when you told your husband? What did he say?
I said, after I told him my story, I said, do you believe me? He said, yes. I said, well, why would I lie to you, of anybody? I said, why would I lie? What would I get out of it? Now,
exactly.
when I did put my story out there, I had thousands and thousands of people, say one thing, it gave them hope. And that's the one goal that I always wanted to get out there, that it gives people hope. Yes, there is another life after this one. Yes, you will see your loved ones. Yes, you will see your pets.
Yeah, and I'm very grateful that you're sharing the story with me as well. So thank you for that. So tell me now, okay, so you woke up. Did some people come back with gifts, some people heal quickly, some don't. What was your experience after you woke up?
Well, when I came back, I was still in ICU for a couple of weeks. They finally discharged me, and I went back to my apartment. And it took me several more months before I was really, really healed. But to this day, I'm very prone to get pneumonia again. So far, it hasn't gotten as bad as it was that first time. So it's like the doctor said, you really never get rid of it. It's always there. And I can sometimes, I can almost feel it right here. And yeah, so it never goes away. My husband and I both were sick back in November. And I was sick for a good month and a half. So he starts getting a little worried. But as long as they say I don't spike those fevers like I did before, I'll get a
Yeah.
fever maybe of 100, 101, something like that, but not like before. Those kind of fevers are horrible. I mean, I would just lay there and I'd just shake and shake and shake and shake. I mean, for 45 minutes, and then it will stop. And I think, oh goodness, thank goodness it stopped. And then 2 minutes later, I'd be right back to it, just shaking and shaking and shaking. So yeah, it was misery. It
Yeah,
really
it
was.
really
I
is
was
because it
very
hurts
sick.
your back as well, all that shaking really badly.
Yes. Yeah, well, I have bone disease anyway. I have degenerative disc disease and spinal stenosis. So I've had it for many years, long before I had my near-death experience. So it kind of
Wow.
runs in my family. So, but
Wow.
no, that didn't help. That didn't
Do
help.
you think that you came back with a message that, besides the hope for people to see that there is something, do you feel like you learned something from that for yourself?
Well, that we are all one. That we should, help our fellow man. Um, that is really the only thing I brought back. I didn't bring back anything like ability to play an instrument or draw or anything like that. I'm not good at that kind of thing. So no, unfortunately, I didn't bring anything like that back. But
But
I do work in hospice, so I have been able to pass my story on to my patients and their family members, and they said that gives them so much hope.
well,
That
that is
really
the
does.
gift,
Maybe
right?
that's my gift. I don't know. Maybe
That,
that's the
that
gift.
gave me goosebumps. So that is it. Because I know when I get chills, there's truth there. Yes. Yes. And it's not about playing a musical instrument. It's about being connected. Like I believe once you've experienced something like that, you can't go back. You've forever had your eyes opened,
Right.
and you're always aware that there is something bigger and something greater, that this earth is temporary. And that's like it's nurturing to know that.
Right.
Doesn't make life easier
It
when we
does.
work
And our
that way.
bodies, I think, are just a vessel while we're here. And once we do pass on and stay gone,
Yeah.
um, then yeah, you really realize then how you are all one with everything. Just it's not just other people; it's just everything. I don't know any way to describe it. That's one thing a lot of people have had near death experience. They said they just can't put it into words. It's almost impossible to put it into words. Everything you experienced, everything that you brought back with you, if you brought back much of anything, so. Um,
Well, your aura is radiating out, I can just tell
uh,
you. So definitely brought something back with you. Your transition, a lot of people are afraid that when they die, it's going to be like difficult or painful. But time and time again, it's just like 1 minute you're here, the next minute you're there. It's effortless. And it sounds like that
right.
was the case for you as well.
It was. It was just immediate. It was, like I said, at first I was puzzled, a little confused. Where am I? What's happened? And then it dawned on me, I died. And I didn't want to come back. I tried to go back and couldn't. And I'll be glad when I can go back and stay. That time will come.
Yeah.
Now, I will say that when I lost my grandmother, she had died about 3 years prior to my near death experience, and I was very close to her. Um, it. I'm sorry, and I start talking about her, it gets me upset, because she was my world, and when I saw her again, I wanted to hug her so bad, and I couldn't. I mean, she wouldn't let me. It wouldn't let me. It was like if you touch them, then that's it. You can't go back. You can't go back. That's just the way I've always felt about it. So
That must be so hard because, I mean, to finally see somebody that you really love, but you'll be able to do it anyway.
yes, when she passed, I will tell you this: when she passed, I was only 19 years old when she passed, and I remember I was the last one to actually see her. My mother, came up to the casket and said her goodbyes and leaned over and kissed her on the cheek. I did the same. I pulled a pink rose out of the spray they put on the caskets and put it between her hands. I leaned over and I kissed her on the cheek and I said, I'll see you in 60 years. So
Wow.
that may be about right because I just turned 60 2 weeks ago. And I think, yeah, probably another 20 years I will see her. I don't think I'll live to be 100 like my great grandmother did. She lived to be 100, but I don't think I will. Um,
Well, that's something we never know, right? Even the
no, you
psychics.
don't. That's true. You don't.
To me, I think it's more important that you lived fully than the age at which you die.
Right.
Did you go through any depression or anything after that?
A little bit. I did see a therapist because my mother noticed I was, not my normal self. And she said, maybe you need to go speak to a therapist. You've been sick so long. And I almost told the therapist about it, but once again, I was scared too, so I didn't say anything. And she said, well, your body's been through a lot of physical trauma. You've been through some emotional and mental trauma, being sick so long. So, and of course, I had to take off a massive amount of work. They put me on an extended leave of absence because obviously they didn't want me working on patients, being that sick. I couldn't even physically stand up hardly, so I couldn't work. But yes, I did see a therapist, and to help me through some of the depression and a little anxiety too. A little
Yeah.
anxiety because the anxiety came from not wanting to be here anymore. But like I told the therapist, I'm not going to do anything. I mean, when my time comes, God will call me, and that could be tomorrow. It could be 30 years from now. I don't know. That's one thing I have learned in 60 years is that you don't know. I was diagnosed about 2 years ago with brain aneurysms. I have 3 brain aneurysms. They run in my family. And my dad passed away from one many years ago. And I just had my youngest brother who passed in December from one. He was 45. He just fell over, gone.
Look, oh, it's difficult. Sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
It's more the loss for the people that are left behind than
Right.
than the ones who go, right?
Because when like I told my husband, when you do go there, when you do pass and you see what I saw and felt the things I felt, you're going to really understand. Yes, she was right.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
um,
I've heard a lot of people experiencing that. 360-degree vision, um,
mm-hmm.
communication without using the words. Also, I've had a lot of people that make comments on the channel. Sometimes people experience hell. or very distressing NDE. And now they're scared of dying because of the 1 or 2% of people that have had that, which is their belief. What can you say to those people that are still in fear?
I do believe there, like I said, there is a God. I know that for sure. Um, I think if you give your heart to Him, then you will go to heaven. You won't go to the other place. So if you do that, it's pretty simple, and you won't be scared. Like I said, you don't have to worry about religions and things like that. There's no religion in heaven. That's just something that just, when I was there, I just felt it. I don't know. I just felt it. I mean, it's possible somebody could still. I don't know. I think, of course, the Bible says that hell was created for the devil and his angels, not for us. So I only think the really, really bad people, maybe people that harm children, the elderly, animals, things like that, are the ones that'll end up there. That's just my opinion, but
Well, I think
I,
some
I
people
don't
have
know.
just, and I love your message. I think that just really sums it up really well. So thanks for that. But
Thank
I
you.
do think that some people are, they're taught in the Bible that if you've sinned, maybe you stole something as a child, or you hit your brother, or whatever, something small, but they believe that that is so shameful
And
that, and that they did this harm and they could have been nicer and they weren't. And then this shame just compounds. And that's, I think, the biggest problem. It's like we all have committed sin in some way, shape, or form. Even just lying to someone and saying, "Yo, I love your dress," and you
right,
don't, it's a lie. But you're doing it because you want to be nice to somebody, not because you're trying to be mean. Yeah,
sure. But I think that as long as you do that. I mean, sure, we've all done things. I've done things. You've done things. That you wish you hadn't have, or said things you wish you hadn't have. That doesn't mean you're going to go to hell because of it.
yeah,
I believe you'll go to heaven as long as you're an overall good person and you accept Christ.
I agree with you. Well, that was absolutely beautiful. If people want to connect with you, how do they contact you, Marcy?
Other than I'm on Facebook, of course.
Okay, so I'll post your Facebook link in the description.
Okay.
All right, and then before we go, do you have a message for our viewers?
Well, like I said, once again, there is a God. You will see your loved ones. You will see your pets someday. Um, you're a good person and you accept Jesus Christ as your personal Savior in your heart, because man looks at the outside, God looks at the heart. And you will go where I went. And it is beyond wonderful, beyond magnificent. And I wouldn't worry about going any bad place, as long as you're a overall good person. And I like I said, I just want to say, I want to give people hope. That's my
Yeah,
message, to give them hope.
yeah.